So what I'd like to do is go over the 2 learning programs that are part of the Vet Engineering 2 program that I need to deliver in my workplace, which is a school. At the moment, we can't go into the metalwork room to do a normal practical class in there, so I've brought that program out to here, and we're going to create a studio outside for that part of the unit.
Sounds good.
And I'll teach my 2 students. So I've selected the drawing and prepare 3-dimensional sketches and drawings VU 22330 unit.
That's good.
And we'll do some introduction lesson to isometric drawing, which will include a variety of things. I'll cover that in a minute. And the other one is basic fabrication techniques, which is where we'll do the introduction to metalwork and making a band ring. So we'll learn about soldering and safety and the language associated with those. So both units have different languages, and we'll be looking at the language, literacy and numeracy requirements against the 5 core learning, reading, writing and oral and communication and numeracy parts of the course.
Okay, sounds good.
Unlike most traditional book-based subjects, the focus of the learning during these sessions will be introducing the relevant language to each of these courses in relation to real-life learning experiences when they do the practical work. And most people are aware that when you put things into practice, the learning is enhanced by doing it in a practical setting, and it'll be retained better. So the students, initially I'll ask students if they've had any experience and ask any prior learning they might know before we start, and then the practical lessons will introduce the specific language and numeracy associated with the unit and reinforcing it as they go through the practical application.
Okay.
And then there'll be a conclusion to the lesson where the students will be asked to verbalise what they've been doing, and the oral response from the students will reinforce the appropriate language and prepare the students for the final tasks after the class. So what they do, what traditionally happens in all of the classes, is that students do a progress journal. And I've found that rather than doing a progress journal in the class time, it's better to actually make it an after-class task to allow for the different literacy skills of the students. And some students find it easier to go away and do it in a quiet space on their own. And then those students who find that more difficult can stay on and either get some one-on-one or one-on-small group help, and that seems to cater for different learning styles more effectively.
Do you find that students happy to do that?
Yeah, the ones who want that help would rather leave and go home having completed it, knowing that it's not sort of adding to their stress.
Okay.
Whereas the ones who feel comfortable about it often feel more stressed of having to stay and do something when they don't need to.
Okay.
So my classes in there are normally students about 15 to 25 would normally be doing this course, whether they're doing it at school or at a TAFE. This group of students, 2 students who I'll be teaching are in different older age group, but their experience level's pretty similar to the school students because they're not experienced. One of the students I'll be working with is dyslexic, and they learn better with visual and oral and practical applications of new learning. And they prefer typing any of their written documents rather than handwriting them. So I always allow for flexibility so that students don't feel conscious of the way that they need to work. Because it's the learning outcomes that's important, not the writing.
Okay.
Now the teacher doesn't make all of this. Yeah, I've done that one. Okay. So I might go through a little bit about detail about the units and what they've got to cover off in those units.
That'd be good.
So they're completely different units of competencies and they have quite different key learning outcomes. So the select and interpret drawings and prepare them for 3-dimensional sketches and drawings. They'll be it's going to be an introductory lesson because it's we don't have 40 hours to do one whole unit or 60 hours to do one of the units. So one introductory lesson to isometric drawing will cover off the language of technical drawing terms, engineering drawing terms, and tools and equipment, what they're actually called. We'll work in measurement. So numeracy will be measuring, scaling, and geometric angles. Geometry and the angles is pretty important. And the practical skill development and reflection on learning of the oral and literacy skills will come through in their work, as I just was talking about.
Yep.
There's really no OH&S issues when we're working in the drawing class, so occupational health and safety is not a focus in that place.
I notice there's a lot of focus on technical drawing, engineering, those sorts of things. If these students are not very experienced, you might want to keep it as simple and practical as possible, because they can easily get lost in some of the terminology. So
that's
making sure you
good.
keep it.
Well, because I had thought about drawing a whole jug, which is something I often do, and then I could bring it back and just do the cube of the jug.
Yeah.
So we can focus on the correct language and the correct terms, and introducing them to the T-square and drawing boards, which is part of the course requirements for the major assessment in this subject, because they have
getting
to do
the basics first, first, and then being able to build on that.
So this course requires them, as part of the exam, to do a technical drawing of an isometric drawing. So this is building those skills towards that assessment.
All right. Understand that.
And everything I'll be going over will be the things that help them do that well to meet the assessment criteria.
Yeah, I suppose I find sometimes, because the temptation's always to make sure you've got everything, sometimes less is more.
Yeah, that's good to keep reminding me.
And then you can build on that as they go.
Yeah, and if you're actually new to technical drawing, the jug that I often do, something I often do is senior students who've been doing a lot of technical drawing for a long time, and when people are new to it, there's some quite complex ways of working that people get quite confused with. So simple and achievable, positive start's probably more effective than trying to put too much in. Great, thank you. The applied basic fabrication techniques is really about fabricating using a range of tools and materials, in particular in metalwork for engineering. So the focus, I'm going to focus on for the lessons, is making a band ring, and that will be an introduction lesson.
Can do that in one lesson?
We'll get the ring made. Well, I thought we could actually do the whole ring and get up to polishing it, but one, we don't have a polishing machine.
Right.
But also too, the filing and shaping can take a couple of hours. So I think that would be better to leave to the next class.
Space it out a bit.
Yeah, and then as you just said, less is more. So really focusing more on that language.
That sounds good to me.
And the new language associated with it, and the skills that they are building on, and how to write them up and how to reflect on them.
Yeah.
And this one has a lot more safety. So this is really applying safety right from the start.
Yep.
So the introductory lesson will be about safety and the responsibility of occupational health and safety, how every person is responsible. So that, that's really making sure that they understand that if they see something that they're not sure if it's safe or not, that they let me know, just in case someone's moved or changed something from when I set it up.
Yep.
So it's not just the person in charge, and also to make sure people all behave safely.
Yep.
Safe clothing is really, really important, because we're going to be using a gas torch, which creates a flame a bit like a Bunsen burner in your hand, and the flame, when it's very hot, when it reaches its full heat, is very blue purple, and sometimes is more difficult to see.
Yep.
And it may be, and so therefore people can not realise how hot that section is when it's difficult to see.
So this is really important, isn't it? Because they can get burned.
Well, they can get burned, they can catch things on fire, and they can also burn others. So there's really three things that we have to really be making sure are covered in them learning how to do it properly and thinking about what they're doing. So the safety, the PPE, wearing the right protective clothing. So there'll be leather jackets if they don't have cotton clothing.
Yep.
And safety goggles are good to wear when you're working with anything that metal's getting hot. I have found that jewellery, we're not reaching super high temperatures with the gas torch, and very, very rarely would you get something flicking or overheating, but it's a good practice to get used to thinking, if I'm going to do something with metal, to do it a safe way. And so they'll go right through shoes, all those sorts of different things. language, yep, no, and that learning the language of PPE, personal protective equipment,
Yep.
is really important for they get to know those languages and the different ways of talking about it. The use of metals, the different types of metals, measuring the gauges for accuracy,
Yep.
and that kind of brings a bit of numeracy in. So they're learning a new language, new numeracy. They'll be cutting, forming, shaping, soldering, and learning those different techniques, and then the language from the metal forming and soldering, such as so they'll be kind of that whole.
There's a lot of stuff
things.
there.
There is a lot of stuff, and that's why I'm thinking now that really probably if we just get the ring soldered, soldering can be the focus of that lesson rather than actually getting the ring mandrel and shaping it and even starting the filing session, which I thought we might get time to do. But I think the language and the new skills is probably more important, that people reinforce those things with the students in the class. And these are part of the assessment criteria. There's a whole number of things that build up to that.
Yep.
And another really important part of it is the reflective journal that they do at the end of the lesson, reflecting on what they've learnt and reinforcing all the learning and language. And because I do most of my teaching in school, I've drawn on and adapted on the school's quality and safety policies and procedures for the program because that's what I normally would work under anyway.
Yeah.
And I found they align with the stated requirements of the course, and they align with the TAFE requirements and how the TAFE runs theirs.
That's good.
So I don't need to look any
That's
further.
good.
Do you think there's anything more I need to add before doing this?
I don't think so. There's, as I said, there's a lot here, so just keeping it simple and
Okay.
allowing people the right amount of time to make sure they're absorbing it all, I think. But
Yeah.
if it was me, that would be important to me.
I think that's why I often ask questions and also rephrase what I'm saying a few times in different ways, so I suit different learners. Sometimes people find that frustrating, but it's better for them to hear the same thing a couple of times and know that they know it than to have missed it and actually not get the answers they need. That's what I find.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you. We'll go and
Welcome.
get it. That's great. Thanks for your
Good
feedback.
luck.
Thank you. Hope you might get there one day. Come to my class.